You talk a lot about alcohol, diet, sport, all that kind of thing. Are they all interwoven? I mean, you're a fit guy, obviously, pretty clean living from what I've read and heard. Is that also part of the secret cocktail of contentment, or what's the answer?
The alcohol thing was interesting because I was a club promoter for a decade and a half. I adored working in that industry. I loved and was very proud of what I achieved. But I got toward the end of my 20s and realized that all of the personal development things I wanted to do seemed to be held back by me electing to ruin 36 or 48 hours, depending on how hard I went, every couple of weeks. I wasn't a big drinker. I didn't drink all the time, but I drank enough to kind of reset my meditation streak or my diet or my training or whatever. And I decided to go sober, elective sobriety. And it was very, very useful for me. I found it unbelievably productive. I was very focused. I had great consistency. And I actually preferred being sober to going back drinking. Now, alcohol is in a unique category of drugs where it's the only drug where if you don't do it, people assume that you have a problem.
Yeah.
People aren't asking you why you're not on cocaine.
Yeah. Are you okay?
What do you mean? Yeah, yeah. Whereas with alcohol, there's an assumption that, oh my God, there must be something wrong, because that's how ingrained it is into the culture. And for me, again, it's all about consistency. Consistency is the important thing. And if you want to make really, really big changes, you need a routine. And unfortunately, the British, Larry, lad drinking culture that we have, that I wholeheartedly contribute to and still think it has its place in a young person's upbringing, isn't always conducive if you want to try and make big changes in your life.
Do you end up, though, with, by default, almost a more boring friendship group? I mean, do you avoid people who like a drink and a laugh and a party? Do you end up having, by comparison, a more boring life? And is it consumed by people who are all pretty straight-laced and clean living? And for many people watching who are not as disciplined, might find that a bit of a turn-off.
That assumes that people who drink a lot are interesting. And in my experience,
yeah,
that is actually the opposite. So many people don't have friends. They have drinking partners, especially in their early 20s. They have a group of people that they go out and get wrecked with. They do not have a community of people that are really interesting to them. If the only way that you can hang around with your friends is to get drunk, to sedate yourself so that they actually seem interesting, that's not the group of friends for you. You can find significantly better friends that you can go out and get drunk, and maybe that makes it fun.
Okay, let me pull you up on that. So I grew up in a country pub. So I grew up around people when I was young who would come in, they'd be incredibly dull for about 20 minutes, have a couple of pints, and suddenly they'd have a life and soul. So I could see that alcohol, as long as it wasn't being abused, could actually be an enhancing tool to making people who are perhaps a little bit introvert or a little bit boring, whatever it may be,
come in. I think,
and I can tell you from my own sons, for example, like my oldest boy likes to go out a couple of times a week and hit the nightclub scene. He's got loads of great mates. They have a good time. It's in moderation. The other 5 days are pretty abstemious and so on. But they love that, and he's got really nice friends. But they love to go and have a bit of a party twice a week. My middle boy is an actor and boxer and so on. He thinks, his body's a temple like you, and he would be nodding away to everything you're saying. But I can see that both of them have really good groups of friends. They're just a little bit different. And I don't see that alcohol needs to be demonized unless you're basically using it like a demon.
No, I would agree. And this is where I got in trouble with both the partying community for being a hypocrite that I ran nightclubs and was going sober. And then I got in trouble with the sobriety community for being someone who had gone sober and then extolled the virtues of alcohol. Anyone who thinks that alcohol can't make a night out better hasn't had a good night out.
Yes.
And they should come to Newcastle in the northeast of the UK and
I've had a couple of big nights out in
night.
Newcastle. I can attest to that.
Yes. So look, that's the first thing that I need to say about it. Secondly, I think that you can periodize these things. And this is what I found was really useful for me. So I would do 6 months of sobriety, usually from the start of the year or maybe just before Christmas, because you can get through the hardest bit, which is the Christmas period when your willpower is at its highest, as opposed to at the very end where you go, I'll just finish it a little bit. And I worked very hard on introspection and reflection and all the rest of the stuff. And then I was like, okay, it's the back end of summer and maybe I can have a couple of, and how do I feel about alcohol? And I tell you something else, resetting your alcohol sensitivity is so fantastic, because lots of the bad effects come from the overconsumption. The reason you're overconsuming is because you're not feeling the effects. So if you make yourself more sensitive, you can have a little bit of a buzz on and not feel so bad the next day. So I think 6 months of sobriety every couple of years for people is a very good
Well,
start.
I actually had it because I got COVID and then got long COVID. It's a couple of years ago. And I lost my taste and smell. So there was no point drinking alcohol because I couldn't smell it or taste it. It was all like water, literally. And it was heartbreaking to crack open a bottle of my favourite French, Chateau Bataille and discover it literally tasted like a glass of water. It was the weirdest thing. So I gave up all alcohol for about 6 months, shredded the weight. I mean, I've never been as fit. In fact, my nutritionist, and don't laugh, I do have one, she said that my numbers, when she tested me after 6 months, were actually better than hers, right? Because I wasn't basically pouring stuff into my body that I didn't need to. But I can't begin to tell you the joy when my taste came back, that first glass of wine afterwards. And I can't lie about it.
Well, that's what life is. Life is, it is push and pull. It is vacancy, and it is saturation of things. And I think that dance is good. But how many people that are listening to this right now, especially a lot of the British people, the last time that they went more than a month without consuming alcohol was when they were 14.
Yeah.
It was before they had their first drink. And if there was any other drug, people talk about something like creatine, one of the most researched compounds in health and fitness. Oh, well, you don't want to be on something all the time, so maybe you could cycle off. Meanwhile, this person goes out to the pub once or twice a week for eternity.